The Forum at 8 on SAFM.
I'm joined in studio by SABC sports reporter Tubby. The woes at ASA and Sascoc, it has a long history. Yeah. You've been on this story. How long now?
I think Geraldine knows me fairly well. We've walked this road, I think, ever since we started way back in 2000. And unfortunately, the scandal, if I can put it that way, all began just after the World Champs in Berlin with the Caster Semenya issue. When we came back, I think everything was kind of put bare out there. That was the Leonard Trainer era. So it's not something new, what is currently happening at ASA. It has all just now come to a head, if I can put it that way. I think the investigations following Leonard Trainer, when he was removed from office. But mind you, this is not the first time Athletics South Africa has been put under administration, by the way. It was also under administration under Ray Marley following that incident. This second time round now with Advocate Zola Majavu. The issues, as far as I pick up from the outside as a journalist looking in. One, I'm not going to say it's egotistical, but yes, in a way, you've got people who want to do right on for the federation.
Well, these are personalities, right? These are public personalities. Exactly. Some of them were runners as well, so they have a vested interest in the sport, and so it's a personality battle.
The question is, do you hire a board, a CEO, a person to run a sport because they were good former athletes, or because they're administrators? They are good CEOs. They're going to run a federation like a business, which I believe firmly, strongly on. That's how we should be looking at things. Sport is a business. It is no longer a sideshow where people come and run, get medals. It is a multi-million rand, if not billion rand, business in South Africa.
Now, so the first issue is egos. This is about whether we appoint independent people or people who have vested interest in the sport. So that's the first issue.
And this is not even solely with athletics. This goes across the board. Whether it's football, whether it's cricket, it all comes back to this very same thing. Do we have the right people at running the federations?
What are the facts affect us in this case?
And as far as SA is concerned, investigations which also involved people like the Hawks. We all know that SA's offices were raided. Financial mismanagement was uncovered, irregularities, etc., etc. I mean, in this case, as far as this administration is concerned, with the new board, people weren't even paid salaries, for example. Staff members within ASA. We had athletes who were not paid prize monies. You had a federation that couldn't organize, events. You had sponsors pulling out. Gone are the days of the Engine Series. And everyone goes through this. It's tough economic times. But what are we doing to get that back on track for the benefit of the athletes? You speak to some of the athletes, former athletes like the likes of Sean Bounds, former 110-meter hurdler, and he says, I would like to have an input in ASA. We've got so much to give back. I've been, an Olympic sports person for South Africa, but somehow we can't even get a foot in to be heard.
Are these positions attractive? Are they well-paid positions?
I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure if somebody sits on any board as far as sports federation is concerned looking for a salary. Most of the people who are on these boards have got other jobs.
So what is it they get out of this? You say it's egos. I mean, is it just for the prominence?
Maybe, we do have a president of ASA on the line, James Evans. I mean, he knows the ins and outs of the board more than anyone. So he could probably shed some light on this. I mean, and the athletes fought so hard. The mere fact that Geraldine is on the board as an ASA, board member for the athletes. It's things like that over the years were not there. But you can see that we're trying to get somewhere, and we appreciate the fact when that decision was made to get an athlete a vote on that board. People like Geraldine to actually stand up for the athletes and be heard. So it's been long coming, but I don't think it's going to be a quick fix. It can be, but it needs a serious look into sports federations, in fact, athletics family as it stands now. They need to come back and say, look, guys, for the benefit of our athletes, South Africa has a proud history in terms of athletes, the likes of Yolanda Meyers, the likes of Ezekiel Sopengs, your Blanche Moyles. I mean, the list goes on. For the sake of what we were, these guys need to come back and actually say, look, we'll pull finger, we'll do this for the benefit of our up-and-coming athletes. Because as it stands, Ezekiel Sopengs said something very profound last week when he spoke to Simon Burke, one of our reporters, said, if you think that we'll get any medal in Rio, forget it.
And that's what the game's all about, getting medals. Let's go back to that history. You said it starts with Leonard Trainer and the history of Caster Semenya. We now see ASA board, ASA's offices raided, questions of financial irregularities being raised. I'm not sure if we've seen much in terms of evidence.
Yeah.
We were hoping to deal with that with Sascoc today. What evidence, what proof of these financial irregularities? I'm sure James Evans wants to talk about that as well. Moving from the financial irregularities, Sascoc decided to do what?
Well, Sascoc's suspension of Athletics South Africa comes on the back of a couple of things. Firstly, James Evans, who is on the line with us, was impeached by his board at a meeting in Johannesburg. Then there's court actions, that James went to, and then that board, vice versa, was then suspended. So there's this legal battle within ASA alone. Sascoc then steps in and says, "Look, guys, I'm going to play referee in this." And you must remember, Sascoc is the begin all and end all of sports in this country, regardless whether you're cricket, tennis, hockey, or athletics, or rugby. Everybody answers to Sascoc. They are the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee. So every sporting body in the country reports to them. Sascoc steps in, "Guys, please stop it. I'm playing ref. I'm putting under administration again for these reasons." Now, one would say that is meddling. Fair enough, it is. But do you expect Sascoc to sit back and say, "Look, we let it go on because they're an autonomous federation. They can do what they want"? Something had to be done because nothing was happening. Speaking to one of the board members yesterday, I'm not going to say their name, and said, "We've been out of the office for over 50 days and nothing has been done. The athletes are looking at us and saying, geez, what is wrong with these people?" Now, 22nd of June, a meeting was held, special general meeting held by the Athletics South Africa. James Evans was there, 7 provinces were there, the AGN was there, one of the associate USASA was there, and they took a resolution to reinstate the board and try and resolve issues at Athletics South Africa as a federation, which I commend. It is time that, because if they're not involved, it's pointless having an administrator if the people who are involved in athletics are not going to have a say in it. So in a way, the administration part of Sascoc, for me, it had to happen. But I feel that the administrator should have worked and could have worked with the board to get things right, because there's no ways he can come in as administrator and make decisions on athletics, whereas he is not an athletics person.
James Evans, you're online with us, president of ASA. Should we call you embattled, president?
Well, I seem to be called anything that people seem to want to, and I think Tabitha, by the way, just has made out probably one of the strongest cases for a media tribunal in South Africa, because, to say that there's been evidences uncovered of financial irregularities, if I was charged in a criminal case, I would be given, they wouldn't be able to produce that information or those allegations until I'd been charged. When it comes to sport in South Africa, it seems that it's fair game. Nobody has given us an opportunity to comment on those allegations, which one would normally expect. And, so allegations have been made without hearing both sides of the story, and they're being reported on as the truth in the media.
Well, Tubby Reddy, the CEO of Sascoc, says you, in fact, at some point requested 18,000 Rand from ASA to pay your rent. He accuses you of double dipping.
Can we stop there, right there? You've just now proven my point again. Tubby Reddy said, therefore, you're repeating it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be tried by the media. I'm not going to deny. I'm denying it because it's untrue. But the point is, I'm going to tell you straight. I'm actually really seriously out of pocket because I've had to pay for hotel bills out of my own pocket, which they refused to. So far, I've been refused refunding. I mean, Zola Majavu didn't want to pay for any of those things. We've never been charged. Geraldine, myself, nobody has ever been charged with anything. Never been given an opportunity to comment on these allegations. They're being reported in the media as if they're the truth.
We're asking you today, how do we get our athletes back on track before they run out of time? Geraldine Pillay joining us on the line, of course. She's one of SA's top athletes, a former member of the Commonwealth Games, a medalist. Geraldine, is there too much politics involved in sport? Is it hurting the athletes?
Yes, indeed. And it's been going on for too long, and I think now we've reached the point that, where the athletes are being affected the most. I've been receiving so many emails and calls from athletes, especially the ones in Europe, because they don't really get the full facts of what is happening in South Africa. All they hear is there's no Commonwealth Games, no All Africa Games, and no Olympic Games, and they are very worried because they think of their personal sponsors. Sponsors want to be affiliated with somebody that will eventually represent South Africa. at the highest level, which is the Olympic Games. And there's Commonwealth Games next year, and for many athletes, the Commonwealth Games is a preparation for the Olympic Games.
Now, who really represents the interests of the athletes here, Geraldine? You talked about all of these games coming up, but who represents those interests at the board meetings? I'm
there as the athletes' representative, but you know what? It's very, very difficult when you're up against 7 other board members who really don't give a damn, I'm sorry for my English, about the athletes. All they care about is their own well-being. They don't care about the athletes. And I'm sure if a lot of these administrators and people in powerful positions really cared about the athletes, we would not be sitting with a situation where athletes are not going to go to the World Games, athletes being banned from Olympics and all of that.
So are we not protecting our sports reputation here? Are we not protecting our athletes? The question then one would beg to ask is, what is being protected?
I don't know if we're going to get that answer. And James Evans has only been in the president of ASA for a year. I mean, he still had 3 years, and I was so excited after our election last year, our democratic election last year, that, we were a mixture of former athletes and seasoned administrators, and I knew this group of people could really take the sport forward. And I mean, you cannot do, damage control in 1 year after 10 years of damage that's been done. And I really hope that other board members would really come to the party and just put our differences aside, because in the end, we were selected by the ASA Council, and that is to take the sport forward and also, to be there for the athletes and make sure that our athletes have perfect conditions in South Africa.
The Forum at 8 on SAFM.